Nobody's feeling what I'm feeling. Like, nobody. Being pregnant is an incredibly lonely experience. I just felt such intense feelings of like uselessness, like guilt and shame of like, it's not something I wish on anyone. Hi all, ciao VCM. So today I wanted to talk about my first trimester experience. Right now I am 4.5 months pregnant, and I have been feeling slightly better over the last like 2-3 weeks, but up until then it was the worst time of my life. So this video is going to be quite rough. I have no notes at all this time. I'm just gonna speak from the heart and share this experience. It really took me such a long time to sit down and do this. I knew that I wanted to talk about it and share it for so many reasons that I'll mention later. Since, you know, since the first week of first trimester, but it's like I'm starting to understand why many women go through that and then never talk about it again, because it really is traumatic. I mean, like truly for me, because I had the extreme severe case of sickness and just like awful first trimester. So it's hard to talk about it, but I want to share it. I think it's really important to share these experiences because I did not know that it could be this bad. I had no idea, not in my wildest, craziest dreams and imagination that I could have about a hard pregnancy. What I went through was nowhere near what I imagined was possible. So after conceiving, I genuinely knew that I was pregnant like that same night and like the coming 5 days, when you know you actually conceive. I already felt like everything going on down there, like my body was reacting so fast. My boobs genuinely like just grew 3 sizes. Like I remember waking up like 5 days later in the middle of the night with like the hardest nipples. Sorry, this is all gonna be TMI. But yeah, so my body was reacting really fast. I was feeling lots of changes going on, and I definitely felt very tired. Like I started feeling very tired, and I want to say I had like 2-3 weeks literally like after finding out I was pregnant that were kind of normal, like more in like the normal pains and discomforts bracket. After that, it basically changed overnight. Like it got really bad. I did not get out of bed for 2 months. 2 months I was on bed rest. I felt like dying. The only thing that I was able to do with my body was go to the restroom, which is like I sleep next to the bathroom. Like all I could do, all I had enough energy and like was able to do was just go use the restroom and come back. Like I couldn't do anything else. I slept 15 hours a night, and then I would wake up and barely shower. Like I kind of like took like 4 hours to gather energy to shower, and then I would shower, come back to bed, nap or stay in bed or just lay in bed. Like I basically just was in and out of sleep. I would watch out the window that I can see in my bed and just like see the clouds pass, hours pass. Like I couldn't watch TV, I couldn't read, I couldn't do anything. Like I felt so awful. Just to really truly frame it and kind of get you to understand how bad it was, because I know that, for those of you who haven't been pregnant, you truly cannot imagine. And for those of you who have been pregnant, if you had pregnancies that were not as difficult, it also may be hard to imagine, because, it kind of just feels like a bunch of complaining, and it kind of just feels like, oh yeah, like I had morning sickness too, I was nauseous too. And to some extent, like almost like absolutely everybody who's pregnant experiences some discomforts and symptoms, but there's a range to this. And I am genuinely not a person to like ever complain about pain or any discomfort. I'm actually very strong in that sense. And when I was going through this experience, like just to draw some comparisons, I remember being sick with, you know, tropical diseases. I remember I had dengue once in Brazil, once in Thailand, and dengue is really, I mean, it's rough. I already have a condition that's like a lowered immune globulin A levels in my blood, so my immunities are pretty bad. So I've been sick a lot in my life, so I'm very used to being sick and, you know, like suffering with dengue. And especially in Brazil, I didn't even go to the hospital. I didn't have access to any of that. Like, I was just dying in bed. I had to have friends help me, take me to pee and like bring me water. You know, like it's hard. I remember 2 years ago when I had to get an emergency IUD removal, and like I was bleeding and in so much pain. After the removal, 10 minutes later, I was on campus teaching a class, like standing up and engaging and so on. Like, I've worked through pain. Like, I remembered all of these experiences, all of these awful like diseases and pains, and like every painful physical trauma I've ever had in my life during those 2 months, and wishing that that's what I was going through. Like, that is how bad it was. I don't know how else to really like emphasize the severity of this. Of course, like if we go into the symptoms, the first one, of course, severe exhaustion. Not only because I was sleeping, you know, 12 hours, 15 hours a night, and then sleeping 2-4 hours more during the day, and then just really being like physically unable to like lift my body up to do anything, like extreme exhaustion. Nausea. When nausea came, I have never been nauseous in my life before, ever. Like, I didn't even know what that feels like. I could be hungover and ready to eat. Like, I have never been nauseous, and I didn't realize, once again, I didn't realize how bad, really bad, to the point where the entire first trimester, I was losing weight rather than gaining. I couldn't eat anything. The thought of food, like, Isaiah and I, like, we had this whole thing those entire 2 months where if we wanted to talk about food, we would spell it out. Like, he would be like, hey babe, do you want some FOOD? Because just mentioning that word would make me sick, like really sick. And the thing is that I wasn't throwing up, which like afterwards I read a lot about how it actually said that for most women, like if you're not throwing up, it's worse. I ended up throwing up, I think only 2 or 3 times, or 3 or 4 times, something like that. Like very few times I actually threw up. But the entire time, the entire 3 months, I felt like, and the only way I can explain it is like, you know, if you have just eaten a bunch of food, just got and then immediately went to like Six Flags and like did Superman ride or something, and then stepped off of it, and you just feel like you're about to literally like about to vomit everything that you have, like that 24/7 for 3 months. Like, that is the one thing about the first trimester where like I was experiencing such intense, like such highly intense levels of all types of pains and discomforts that typically when we experience, because they're so intense and severe, we experience them for a short amount of time, and then like we either throw up or get better or get painkillers or something. But I was feeling like that every moment of every day. That was one of the things that like psychologically was so hard, like so hard to just like feel that way and like know that you can't do anything about it, and it's just not going away, and like you don't know if it's gonna go away. And the other symptom that I don't really know how to explain, like I know Isaiah was asking me often, like, what's wrong? Like, how are you feeling? And I tried to, but if there really is no way to describe it. I was just feeling like internally, as if my entire body and as if all of my bodily functions and organs and like any of the internal bodily processes started working against me. Like, that is the only way that I can explain it. Like, it just felt like, you know, like normally day to day, because all of our bodily functions are working for us, we don't pay much attention to them. It was exactly during those 2-3 months where all of a sudden I realized just how much our bodies are doing for us on the daily, because everything just felt like they were working against me. Like, they were doing great for the baby, I'm sure. Like, they were doing all the good things for the baby, for the little fetus and so on. But for me, like, everything, like just everything internally felt awful. I mean, like, once again, if you haven't felt it, I really can't explain it, but it was just an awful, awful feeling. Like all of my insides just felt awful 24/7 all the time. And then I had, you know, the entire range of any other symptom that you can imagine. The worst, I thought, like personally, one of the like worst symptoms was, which is also very common, that during pregnancy you have excessive saliva. So something happens, like, you know, like your whole thing is fucked up. Your hormone levels are fucked up. Your blood volume changes. Like, you know, your uterus grows 10 times. You like everything. There's just these massive internal changes that happen. So one of them is also, you know, like something presses on something in the brain. So you start having excessive saliva. And it doesn't sound bad, but literally, like, and Isaiah like remembers this, and he was so grossed out too, but like I would be sitting here on the couch, like even after the 2 months, like when I kind of like could get out of the bed and go to the couch, I would be sitting there with a cup in my hand, and every 10 minutes I would go. Once again, you do not understand what that feels like if you've never had it, but it feels awful. It adds so much to the nausea you're already feeling. I just remember like the day that I woke up and I had normal levels of saliva, like I no longer had excessive saliva, I was like the happiest girl in the universe. Like I remember telling my best friend Ashley, like, Ashley, I have normal levels of saliva, like crying tears of joy, because it was awful. I mean, like something as little as that, but like millions of things like that are just going wrong in your body, and like all of it is happening at once. Other things, you know, like the one thing that happens also when you get pregnant is basically your entire digestive system and digestive tract is just fucked, like really fucked. First of all, because I was so nauseous and so sick, I couldn't eat anything and I had to force feed myself. And I cannot explain to you how awful that is when you like are just repulsed, like utterly like just disgusted by any sight of food, but you have to eat, and you just like push it while you're just like gagging while you're eating. I mean, like and you have to do that for every meal for 3 months. Yeah, that was just awful. But yeah, so your whole digestive tract is fucked. So constipation, diarrhea, you know, one or the other, just for no reason at all, just because, you know, all of these systems are not working properly. And all of this together truly just made it so hard mentally. Like I was severely depressed. I cried every single day. I would just cry like several times a day because of how hard it was, like crying and just thinking like I can't take a minute more of this, I can't take an hour, I can't take a day more of this. And it just kept going on, and like there was no end in sight. Like no end in sight. There is no end in sight. You don't know. Like I'm lucky that it ended 3 months later. It could have went on for the entire 9 months, but I was crying because of how awful it was. I was crying because it's such a lonely experience. Like no one is going through it with you, you know. Like of course I have my mom and I have sorry, and I have like the most supportive husband in the world, but nobody's feeling what I'm feeling. Like nobody. Being pregnant is an incredibly lonely experience. And like also being isolated for those 3 months, you know, because obviously even though my best friend lives in my building, like I was in no condition to see anyone. Like all of that isolation and like literally not leaving your bed for 2 months, and the 3rd month I was kind of in and out of bed, but not leaving your bed at all, like not being able to, like I'm not kidding, I was just looking out the tops of the windows. I can't even see, like, because we're on the 7th floor, all I see is the sky. I just remember like one morning seeing like, oh, all the leaves have fallen, you know, and all I would really see like for that time period is just clouds. And mentally it was so hard, like dealing with all the mental stuff on top of like how awful you feel physically. And then what also adds to that is because I was completely unable to take care of myself, like completely unable to take care of myself, which means that entire time Isaiah prepared all of my meals. Isaiah washed all of the dishes. Isaiah did all the grocery shopping. Isaiah did all the laundry. Isaiah did everything. Like, I couldn't do anything. And you know, like, of course it was hard on him because he also works 10-12 hours a day every day, and it was really hard without any support and stuff. But for me, I just felt such intense feelings of like uselessness, like guilt and shame of like, I think especially as somebody who is typically a caregiver, like I'm a massive caregiver. I care for my mom, I care for my parents, I care for Isaiah, I care for myself. Like, I don't even count that myself as one of the people I care for. I'm a caregiver. To be in a position where I need to receive care and to receive intense care because I'm unable to do anything was really, 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 really hard. Like, to know that I'm in bed and like I'm thirsty and I want tea or like hot water or something, and oh my god, I need to text Isaiah to ask him to do that. And you know, I know that he works so hard at his job, that he's constantly busy, you know, like typically I'm the one to help him, not the other way around. And so like sometimes I just wouldn't tell him because I know that I can't interrupt him anymore, and I would just suffer there. And like just this feeling, like I had such massive sympathy for anybody who's disabled in any way, because like wanting to make tea or drink water and just not being able to unless somebody does it for you, it's not something I wish on anyone. Guys, this actually did get me thinking so much more about how we've organized society and what it must be like for people who are disabled and who can't care for themselves. Like, I have never been in that situation. I've always been, you know, young and healthy, and I imagine myself as staying that way for a long period of time. But in reality, you know, pregnancy or not, this is something that we really can't predict and we can't count on. And really all of us are like one awful accident away from something happening and for us needing that constant care. And just seeing how, you know, the way our society is structured, and being in my situation, you're not getting any help. You can't get any help. How awful that feels, like that really made me reconsider so many things about my entire life, like so much. And truly, like, I'm very, very ashamed to even say this, but I definitely had like brief thoughts of like just ending this pregnancy because of how awful it was. Like, it, as I said before, you know, like if I had had a job, I would have had to quit, you know. There is no office that's gonna say, okay, stay home for 3 months because you're very ill, you know, like you're feeling awful, and then come back. And then, you know, 6 months later have a child and take another 3-6 months off. Like, no one's gonna be okay with that. Like, that is something that is just, I keep talking about this all the time, like men and women, or uterus owners and penis owners or whatever, like we're embodied differently. And for the job market, like Isaiah does not need to worry about any of this, you know, like I'm the one who needs to worry. If I had actually, like, you know, just found a job and started working and this happened, I would have had to quit. Like, I would have lost that opportunity. I'm done crying, I promise. So anyways, as I was going through all of this, I was Googling and I was researching, and like every other day I would write in my phone, like, why do some women have an easy pregnancy and others have such a difficult one? And there is no answer to that. There is absolutely nothing about my health that would have expected, you know, like that would have predicted for this to be my pregnancy. I'm extremely healthy, I'm fit, I have no issues with anything, you know, like I work out every day, I'm vegan, I eat extremely healthy, like nothing. My mom had like an amazing pregnancy. To this day, she describes being pregnant with me as walking above ground, an experience I cannot relate to. So there was literally nothing in any way that indicated this it would happen this way. And like, it's because you just don't know. Like, there is no, like, every single woman, every single person, every single pregnancy is completely unique. Like, completely unique. You can't know, you can't predict, which is another reason why I'm talking about this and why I think it's so important to talk about this. Because if I had known, you know, that it could be like this, I mean, first of all, I would have planned better for to have my care needs met. Like, I would know that I need my mom through this with me. But especially, you know, if you're planning to get pregnant and you have a job or, you know, like different responsibilities, like things to take into consideration, because you just don't know how it's going to be for you. But yeah, so I was Googling and researching, and what I found out is, wow, tons, hundreds of thousands of blogs and YouTube videos of women describing the exact same experience that I'm describing. I read so much, and like it made me feel so much better to read that, to hear women say that, you know, for like 3-4 months I was basically on the couch, like I couldn't move, like my husband had to move all the food down to the lowest level at the fridge so our kids can access it themselves, because I wasn't able to do anything, you know, or like we were only able to order food the entire time because I wasn't able to cook, like you know, just felt depressed and severely, you know, severely depressed and awful. And like I was reading all these experiences, and it was so shocking and eye-opening to me, because as I said before, I didn't know it could be like this, but turns out it's not uncommon. Turns out that it's actually quite a lot of women that go through that. It's just not talked about. And then, you know, later, 2 months later, when I reactivated my social media and like shared my pregnancy with people and shared kind of how difficult it's been, I received, you know, 20-30 messages from women who were saying that they had the exact same experience, or their mom or their sister had the exact same experience, like to the, like literally, I'm talking like everything that I'm describing, like women saying that, yeah, they had a pregnancy just like this, and it's the reason why they unfortunately will never have children again, because you just, and I'm in the same boat, like after how this has been, I don't know what type of tricks nature got to play on my mind for me to do this again, because it was awful. Women truly telling me that like that happened to them and they had to quit their jobs because they weren't able to do anything, you know, like to move or anything at all. And especially because for most women it is the first trimester, and the first trimester is also the time that you are hiding that you're pregnant because of the chance of miscarriage. So additionally, that was an additional mental thing that made it so much harder, is that I couldn't tell anyone that I was pregnant, and that really added to it as well. Yeah, since then I've done more research, and turns out that it's actually a thing more recently that women have started coming out about their pregnancies, because unfortunately there is so much shame and stigma and guilt around not enjoying your pregnancy. Like, this is something I heard from a lot of women and a lot of blogs and a lot of YouTube videos that I read, where and I felt the same way, where it's almost like, well, it's such a blessing to be pregnant. Like, I know so many women are, and so many couples and so many people are trying to conceive and are unable, and this is such a blessing, and how dare I say anything negative, you know, and all these things. So it's like, a lot of the time people literally just don't talk about it because of that. And so now there's even been this movement where women are coming out to talk about like how awful it actually was. I had this one video in particular that like 5 or 6 people sent me of, you know, this famous whatever YouTuber talking about how awful her pregnancy was. And the one thing is, and like part of the reason I'm doing this video is that if you are going through this, you're not alone. Like, it feels like you're alone because there is no basis for comparison. Like, I cannot, even if I talk to a fellow pregnant woman, I cannot explain my feelings and symptoms to her and she explains hers to me, and, you know, for us to objectively decide like, oh, you know, it's the same, or mine is a lot worse, or, you know, this is okay, whereas this is not, like, this is probably a cause for concern or something. There is no way of knowing that, literally, at all. So I want everyone who's going through that to know that you're not alone. You should not feel no shame or guilt surrounding that. Maybe carrying a baby, but you are still a human and you still deserve to feel okay. I'm gonna end this video here because I'm gonna keep crying, but right now I'm 4.5 months pregnant and I'm feeling so much better. I want to say better is still relative because I still have almost no energy, you know. When I go to cook in the kitchen, I bring in this ottoman and I kneel on it in order to like chop veggies and make food, because I'm unable to stand for more than 5 minutes. So feeling better is relative, but compared to how I was feeling, I'm feeling so much better. I just feel grateful and thankful. And, you know, as I was going through it, a lot of the sites and everything said it would be, you know, the first trimester, but then my first trimester ended and it continued on. And a lot of the experiences I read about and a lot of women that reached out to me said that that is how they felt the entire 9 months. There is no rule that says that this is only going to be your first trimester. And to be honest, I kind of was set on, you know, that likely being my entire pregnancy with how it was going. So I'm just so blessed and thankful that that's not the case and that I'm starting to feel better. But yeah, this is my experience and I hope it can help somebody, and sending much love to anyone going through this right now.